My dog attacked my stalker after he broke into my house. Now my sister-in-law says my dog is too dangerous to be around my niece. Plus update. A few years ago, I got into a relationship with a man who love-bombed me from the start. The relationship got very abusive and very controlling very quickly. When I finally broke it off a year ago, my ex started showing up to places I was at, trying to get me to take him back. Eventually, it developed into full-on stalking. He would show up at my work, and took to just waiting outside of it after he was banned. He would leave notes on my car when I was at the grocery store, leave all kinds of flowers outside my house, and then stick angry notes on my door after he saw me throw them in the trash. He wrote me all kinds of weird, obsessive emails and letters. I've had to change my phone number 3 times. The behavior escalated over time, and got more threatening. In one instance, he started a small fire in my driveway, but the police couldn't get enough evidence connecting him to it. It was after that instance that I put cameras in my yard. I was horrified to learn that the police couldn't do anything about any of this until my stalker actually was caught doing something illegal, like breaking into my house. At which point, I might already be dead. I decided I wasn't spending the rest of my life waiting for the other shoe to drop, so I got a firearm and a concealed carry permit, took some self-defense courses, and started doing strength training. I also looked into getting an attack dog, but after all the money I'd sunk into my other methods of protection, they were prohibitively expensive. So I went to my local animal shelter and got the scariest, meanest-looking dog I could find. This is where Thor comes in. He's a 120-pound American bulldog, looks like he'd end you on sight, but is basically a gigantic teddy bear. He loves every person he's ever met, is incredibly sweet and gentle with my 4-year-old niece, enjoys other animals, and even loves the mailman. I just kind of accepted that he probably wouldn't do anything to protect me from my stalker, but it didn't matter that much because having such a huge dog made me so much more confident. I brought Thor everywhere I could, and was working on getting him trained enough to be an emotional support animal, so I could bring him inside places with me. Last month, I woke up in the middle of the night to Thor whining. I was groggy and thought he had to go to the bathroom, so I got out of bed and opened the door. At that point, my house alarm went off, and pretty soon after that, I was face to face with my stalker. I started screaming and went to run for my firearm. Before I could do anything though, Thor ran across the room in full attack mode. There was blood all over my living room, and I remember my stalker was eventually able to escape, at which point Thor chased him outside and then came back to me. When the police showed up, they said Thor was a hero who'd probably saved my life. In my stalker's car, they found hardcore substances, a firearm of his own, a blowtorch and rope. It looks like he's going to prison for a long time though, so my nightmare is over. Pretty much everyone in my life thinks Thor is a hero, except my sister-in-law. She and my brother have a 4-year-old daughter. She says since Thor has snapped in the past, he could do it again, so he's not safe to have around kids. The way she words this makes me really angry because Thor didn't snap. He saw a stranger break into his home, heard his owner scream in terror, and reacted to defend me, himself, and his house. Nothing about that screams dangerous around children to me, unless my 4-year-old niece is also going to break into my house under the influence with firearms and blowtorches in her car. This is also a very emotional issue for me because Thor isn't just a dog to me. He's my safe place, my hero, the one who protected me and kept me safe when no one else could. I've also gotten increasingly anxious since this happened, and I can't go anywhere without Thor. I barely leave my house, pay to pick up my groceries from the store instead of going in because I know Thor isn't allowed inside, and all my friends know that if Thor isn't welcome in their house, I'm not coming either. I am really going through it, and am working with a therapist to overcome this. But I really need my brother and sister-in-law's support. I think my sister-in-law thinks I'm just pouting, and that's why I won't just leave the dog home and come over without him. I don't know how to explain to them that the fear hasn't stopped just because my stalker is in jail. What can I do to make her understand the situation better? Update: the conclusion I came to in all of this is that while my sister-in-law is well within her rights to protect her daughter, she went about it in a way that disrespected me, both as a friend and as a victim of a very recent violent attack. We were extremely close before this happened. I was always there for them, and would literally drop plans to babysit my niece if my brother and sister-in-law needed a night to themselves. The very least they could have done for me, after I was almost kidnapped and unalived, is trying to find some compromise. We went from seeing each other 3 times a week to pretty much not seeing each other at all. I invited my brother and sister-in-law over, and tried to lay all this out without being confrontational or acting like a jerk. To my surprise, my brother and sister-in-law had no real understanding that I've been having a difficult time. They thought I was basically fine and everything in my life was more or less back to normal now that my stalker is in jail. They rationalized this by saying that during the year that I was stalked, I didn't show many signs of fear. I even made jokes about having a stalker, according to them. This is partially true. I knew people wouldn't want to hang out with someone who was constantly going on and on about some bad thing that was going on in their life, and I didn't want to be that person who was perpetually in crisis, so I was lighthearted about it sometimes. However, I'm not sure if I totally buy that they didn't know I was going through something traumatic and that it was taking a huge toll on my mental state. I mean, I got a firearm and paid for tactical training. I bought a home security system. I got active in self-defense classes and strength training, things that I previously had no interest in. Plus, who just brushes off having their house broken into in the middle of the night? It seems crazy, and they don't seem so emotionally unintelligent that they'd think that. But both my brother and sister-in-law did apologize for being insensitive, and when I pressed my sister-in-law on why my suggestion of crating the dog isn't good enough, she eventually relented and said that it would be fine. It probably helped that the entire time they were over, Thor was asleep and loudly snoring in his crate. The paranoid part of me is convinced they just don't want to deal with me in a fragile state, made up an excuse about my dog, and are now just going to come up with some other excuse about why they can't see me. I invited them over for dinner in a few days and they're coming, so I guess I'll just have to see from there. In other news, yesterday I left my dog at home and drove around my block alone. I was shaking the whole time, but I did it. I keep trying to remind myself that I spent a whole year fighting back even though I was utterly terrified. I can't just lay down now that I'm so close to getting my life